We hit the Carlin iceberg, man. Carlin was the smartest person I ever met, hands down. Smartest man I ever met in this world. And I was a big fan from childhood. My father gave me George Carlin as a kind of fucking gift. He used to bring home records, comedy albums, from work. He worked at the post office. And so in the morning, he worked night shift. He'd come home, he'd wake me up and be like, here's this comedy album. So I listened to all comedy albums. And he gave me George Carlin's Class Clown, but he gave me that one on the down low. And he was like, don't let your mother hear you listening to this. And she's like, she likes you to listen to the clean, good comedians like Bill Cosby. So I listened to George Carlin, Class Clown with headphones on, a big hi-fi record player, big ass headphones plugged into the fucking thing. And fell in love, man. He's a master of language, funny as fuck, curses full head off, but he's also intelligent. So I listened to all his albums, became a big fan. Then one day my father says to me, this is when we first got HBO, so in the early days of cable, 1982 or something. My father comes into my room and he goes, George Carlin is gonna tell jokes for an hour on HBO. We didn't have the language for like, George Carlin's gonna do a comedy special because that didn't exist yet. So he had to explain it like a caveman. Funny man, tell joke long time. So I was like, ooh, can we watch it? He's like, yeah, we're gonna watch it. My mom was like, I don't know if you should watch this. If he should watch this, like Don, the boy is very young and stuff. And my father was just like, oh, Grace, don't worry. George Carlin is Catholic like us. So we gathered to watch Carlin and Carnegie in my living rooms. My father is sitting on the couch, and I'm laying on the floor on my stomach eating a TV dinner. I was probably done by the time it started and shit. And my mom was in one of those chairs that you pull the thing and the legs go up and shit like that. So if you've never seen Carlin Carnegie, when he first comes out on the stage at Carnegie Hall, the first joke that George makes is like, have you ever noticed that people are against abortion are people you wouldn't want to fuck in the first place? The audience reacts thusly as they just did. As did my father, who was like, ah. But my mother was like, I don't like this at all. And my dad was like, oh, Grace, lighten up. And my mom was like, Don, the boy's gonna ask all sorts of questions. And my dad's like, no, he won't. And I turned to my father, I was like, Dad, what is abortion? And my mom goes, see? And she gets up and she storms out and shit, and she goes in the kitchen. And I look at my father, I was like, should we turn it off? And my father goes, no, let's keep watching. And then we kept watching George Carlin. I got to see a different version of my father than I'd ever seen before in my life. He was so engaged with this man. He was talking at the screen. I never saw my father talk at the TV screen. He was like, you tell him, George, yeah, he's absolutely right. Shit like that. It was joyous. I saw a different version of my father. And I saw my father laughing hysterically, long and hard, crying. He was laughing so fucking hard. You know, and I'm a young, impressionable mind, and some of the things I understand, and some of the other things I don't. They made me look up those things later on, made me a smarter individual because of it and stuff. So I loved it. I loved him as stand-up on record. There I am hearing his best bits, watching him do it live. All the faces I never saw listening to the record, I got to see him do. And sooner or later, my mom came back into the room when George was talking about Tippy, the farting dog. My mom came and she's like, this I like, this is funny. Dogs that fart are funny, you know. And she, you couldn't curse in my house. It's a very Catholic household. My mother never said hell. She would say, oh, H-E double hockey sticks and shit like that. And here was this guy cursing his fucking head off in my house. And my parents were totally copacetic with it. And I was like, this guy works on smart people like my dad and people who like farting dogs like my mom. Like, he's hitting everybody. I said, I want to be like this guy when I grow up. I want to be funny and curse a lot. Like, this is fucking good. And so I grew up loving George Carlin. One day I saw him at where did my brother go? Fairleigh Dickinson in New Jersey. My brother's going to college and he's like, hey, I got tickets for George Carlin. It was like a theater like this, but on campus. And I was sitting like there. Like from there to here. I could have thrown a tissue at George Carlin and broke his eye. You know, I was that fucking close. So I fucking loved it. We ate the show up and shit. Years later, I make movies and suddenly I get a job. And then years later, we're gonna make this picture called Dogma. And I wanna cast Cardinal Blick. And I'm like, we should get fucking George Carlin. So we reach out to his manager, this guy named Jerry, and we're like, hey man, my name's Kevin Smith. I made Clerks. Like, never heard of it. I was like, Chasing Amy? Never heard of it. I was like, we executive produced Good Will Hunting. He's like, oh, Ben and Matt, I heard of that movie and shit. So I was like, right on. I said, well, the next movie that Ben and Matt are making is this movie called Dogma, and we want to put George Carlin in. He goes, what? Hey, what do you want George to play? And I was like, he'd be playing a Catholic cardinal. And he goes, oh, George will love that. He's going, well, do you want to send me the script? And I said, well, I could. I said, or I'm going to be on the Conan O'Brien show when he was doing late night with Conan O'Brien. I said, I'm going to be on Conan O'Brien the same night as George. I could bring the script there. And he goes, that's a great idea. Do that. And I was like, all right, thanks. So between that phone call and the time that I was on Conan O'Brien, George's wife passed away. And, you know, obviously he was heartbroken. It wasn't just his wife, it was his business partner. They built George Carlin together and stuff. She was the producer on all his HBO specials. And his dear friend. So, not to mention his wife. So he was obviously crestfallen. And he didn't do what he was going to do on Conan that night. Instead, he did an older, prepared desk piece that was a little safer, that he could just sit down and concentrate on and not try anything new. So you could tell that he was off his game, and you know, rightfully so. His world had just come to an end. So I told Jerry, I was like, hey man, here's the Dogma script. I'm not gonna bother him and stuff. You can give it to him like at your leisure down the road and stuff. And tell him like, you know, I'm so sorry about his wife, and I thought he was really funny tonight. So 2 days later, get a phone call from Jerry, and he goes, hey man, you're gonna be in Los Angeles on Thursday? I said, yeah. He's going, great. George wants to meet with you and talk to you about Dogma. I was like, really? He said, yeah, can you meet him at the Four Seasons at noon in the dining room? He said, absolutely. So I'm late for fucking everything, my life, everything. It was the one time I was early, it was an hour early. I was at the restaurant before anybody came in. It was me and the waitstaff. And I picked a table where I could see every fucking door you could possibly come in from, and sat there and fucking waited and shit. At noon on the fucking dot, George Carlin comes into the restaurant. It's an empty restaurant, mind you, and I'm the only person sitting in it, and that is clear from every fucking angle you walk into the room, particularly the angle George came in. And this is how George entered the room. He goes, and then fucking walked over. And he goes, how you doing, George Carlin? I said, I know who you are. Oh my God, I'm such a huge fan. He's like, I can tell because I just read your script. And I was like, did you like it? He said, I do. He's gone, but kind of feels like I had an influence on it. And I said, oh, you very much did. He goes, I thought so. And he goes, in some places, it kind of feels like I deserve co-author credit. I was like, is that what you wanted to talk about and stuff? And he goes, no. He's going, listen, I love it. I think it's great. I love anything that fucks with the church. Fuck him. He's going, so, of course I want to do this. He's going, me playing a cardinal is just very, very funny. But we got a problem, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. I said, what's the problem? And he was just like, well, as you know, my wife just passed away recently. I was like, oh no, I'm very sorry to hear that. He goes, yes. He's gone, and I'll be honest with you, I'm just not ready to take the ring off yet. Can't do it. Need to keep that ring on. He's going, but if I'm playing a cardinal, you can't be wearing a wedding ring. I'm not supposed to be married. So, if you'll permit me, I have a suggestion. Like, if I could, I would like to wear a Band-Aid around the ring so that, you know, I could still wear my wedding band in the scene. And I know it means that, like, it affects your scene. Maybe it makes the guy clumsy or whatever because he's wearing a Band-Aid. Maybe it's unsightly, but if I could do that, then I can be in the movie. What do you say? And I was like, I wish you were my fucking dad. That's so beautiful. I was like, oh my God, you can wear Band-Aids all over your whole fucking body, man. Yeah, absolutely. And he came and joined us, and he was everything you hoped. He was not the dude that, like, is always on, you know, trying to make you laugh. George was not that way. George, you know, was just, he didn't feel the need to make you laugh at all. He'd had a lot of conversations with him. He'd chit-chat, he's friendly as fuck. But he wasn't always putting on a show. He could be funny in conversation, but funny the way people are in conversation. Not like, oh shit, he's doing his bit, here comes advertising lullaby. So it was just a normal guy, smart as fuck. You can hold any conversation, interesting and shit. But really committed to performance. Like, you know, a lot of people on set goof around, fucking chit-chat, and gossip and whatnot. George was like, he's a method actor. He was there to fucking perform. He had questions. He was like really hardcore devoted to the art form.
That's awesome.
In Jersey Girl, we were doing a rehearsal. It was me and Ben Affleck and George Carlin, and Jennifer Lopez was going to join us like an hour into it. But right now, it was just Ben and George playing his dad. We were doing those scenes together. So before we start reading the script, rehearsing, George is opening the script, folding it open, Ben's pouring coffee, and he's like, Kevin, I have a question for you as the author of this piece. I was like, okay. He goes, in the script, I'm always giving Greenie shit. My character's always giving Greenie shit. That's Stephen Root played Greenie. He's like, it's never really explained why. There's no good reason for why I'm giving him shit. I'm always stepping on his dick. He's going, so I was bumping into that. So what I did last night is I wrote a backstory for myself about why I'm always giving Greenie shit. It has something to do with my wife and whatnot. It's 6 pages long. He's going, I just want you to know I've written it, I've committed it to my memory, I've thrown it out, I won't reference it, but just know that whenever I'm doing the dialogue in the scene, that is what I'm pulling from, this old arbitration that I have with Greenie. Huh. And I turned to fucking Ben Affleck, I'm like, why can't you be this fucking good, man? So he was like so fucking into performance, and then that was the weird thing, like I was able to do for him. Like, this is a guy who gave me so much. Like, I stand on stage because, like I said in the movie, because he stood on stage, and I tried to be funny because, like, he made it seem so fucking fun. And I could not pay back my master for all my master had given me, but I could give him the one thing that he wanted in this life. He wanted to act. That was his dream. Like, he wanted to be Danny Kaye, a song and dance man in movies and stuff. And he backed into being one of the greatest comedians that ever fucking lived. But he loved to fucking act. So every time, like, I could put him in something, he was just so fucking happy to come out. We did Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and it's the movie in which he fucking sucks off a trucker. That beautiful mouth that said some of the most brilliant things in comedy, just, And we were on set, and he comes up to me, and he's like, Kevin, I have a question for you as the author of this piece. That was his catchphrase. I said, recognize, and he's going, okay, in the scene, I'm talking about the rules of the road and shit. He's going, now, do I believe in this shit, or am I just fucking with these two assholes? And I was like, well, fucking George, that's more thought than I ever put into the script. But I said, when I was writing it, I was pretty sure that I felt like he was being sincere. He goes, that's what I thought. I'm gonna play that intent. That's exactly what I thought. And I was like, George, you really don't have to give it this much. I mean, you're just blowing the trucker, for heaven's sake. And he goes, yeah, you don't understand performance then, Kevin. I've got to communicate the honesty of that scene, the raw emotional honesty, or else the audience is never going to understand. He's going, so it's very important that you know the truth in my eyes before I do this. He went off and fucking shot the scene. He was so beautiful like that. So I love to put him in things. The last thing he was supposed to be in with us was Zach and Mary Make a Porno. He's supposed to play the role that Tom Savini played, the guy that sells in the building that gets knocked down, that they shoot the porno in and stuff. That was supposed to be George. And then Jerry called me up like, one day, we were about a week into production. We were trying to make George's dates work because George spent like 250 days of the year. He was always on stage somewhere. And when you're making a movie, you have a pretty set schedule. Sometimes people's schedules are inflexible. His couldn't move this time around. So Jerry's like, George is gonna call you up and he's gonna have to let you down. I was like, don't tell him not to worry. I completely understand. Absolutely, it's totally cool. So he called me up and he goes, Kevin, George Carlin. I said, hey man, how are you? He goes, well, I'm not good. I can't come play. They got me at Caesar's Palace. I can't come. I was like, I know, it's a bummer, man. I understand. He goes, yeah, it's a bummer. He goes, but if I know you, you'll be making another piece of shit any minute now. So I'll be waiting for the next call. And then we never got to do it because he passed away after that. But man, oh man, he was everything that you hoped for. And he gave me so much. This aspect, me standing here and talking to you. I don't pray anymore. I used to be a very Catholic person and fucking I let go of all that. And Dogma was a big part of that. And George was a big part of me letting go, as I talked about in the movie. But before I come on stage, there's 2 times where I do still pray. And it's so weird because I don't really believe, but I was raised a Catholic, so it's instinctual. There's incredible branding in that religion. They get you when you're young, and it's really tough to shake it out, man. Even though you're like, I'm smarter than this, it's like, well, but just in case. So 2 times I still pray in this life. One is whenever I'm flying, whenever the plane takes off. I say a little prayer, like, oh, please don't let me die. And if my wife's with me, I always fucking reach over and hold her hand and, include her in the prayer. Lord, please don't let her die either and stuff. And my wife always makes the sound of disgust and goes, ugh. If you're gonna make wishes to Santa, leave me out of it. So I'm always like, Lord, send her to hell. So I pray when the plane takes off, and the other time that I pray is right before I come out on stage. And I always say, Lord, please let me be honest. As long as I'm honest, everything will be all right. And please don't let me embarrass George. And so I still think of him all the time. Last interaction I had with him, I think, well, it was that Zach and Mary one, but I have the phone message, which is awesome. He one time called the house, and he left a rambling message. Not rambling, it was rather to the point, but it sounded like a George Carlin routine. And it was on back when I had like a boop kind of machine, it wasn't even voicemail. So the message was like, boop, Kevin, George Carlin. Hey man, I just want you to know I'm going into rehab. Nothing that serious, I've just been hitting the wine a little bit hard, and I want to get ahead of it before it gets ahead of me. And I just wanted to tell you, in case the press comes sniffing around, and if they do, it's okay to tell them that I'm in rehab. They're vultures, but they might need to know that. So, and I'm not embarrassed about this. I'd be embarrassed if I wasn't going to rehab. The fact that I'm taking control shows great strength and moral courage. All right, fuck the church. Bye.